The sound of splintering wood echoed through my house as my front door exploded inward. 3 men in fake police uniforms stormed into my living room, shouting orders and waving badges that looked official but felt wrong. They expected to find a helpless homeowner cowering in fear. Instead, they found themselves face to face with Rex, my 175-pound German shepherd, whose deep growl filled the room like thunder. The lead intruder froze mid-step, his hand hovering over what I now knew was a fake badge. Rex positioned himself between these criminals and me, every muscle in his massive frame coiled like a spring ready to unleash hell. The man who had been shouting orders just seconds before now stood silent, his face pale as he realized he had made a terrible mistake. That moment changed everything. What started as months of HOA harassment had just become a home invasion. But these fake cops had no idea they were about to learn the hardest lesson of their lives. Sometimes justice comes with 4 paws and a bite force of 238 pounds per square inch. 6 months ago, I thought I had found paradise. My house sat on a quiet street in what seemed like the perfect suburban neighborhood. The lawns were green, the streets were clean, and my neighbors smiled and waved when I walked Rex every morning. Rex is my German shepherd, all 175 pounds of him, with a gentle soul but the protective instincts of a trained guardian. I work from home as a software consultant, which means I spend most of my time in my office with Rex lying beside my desk. He has been my constant companion for 4 years now, ever since I rescued him from a shelter. The staff warned me he was too big for most families, but I saw something special in his intelligent brown eyes. He needed someone who understood that size does not equal aggression, and I needed a loyal friend who would never judge me for working odd hours or talking to myself during video calls. The trouble started small, like most disasters do. I received my first HOA notice 3 weeks after moving in. The letter, typed on official letterhead, informed me that my grass was 1 inch too tall according to community standards. I laughed it off and mowed the lawn that same afternoon. Rex supervised from the shade, his tail wagging as he watched me push the mower back and forth across our small front yard. The second notice arrived 2 weeks later. This time they complained about the color of my mailbox. Apparently, the previous owner had painted it forest green, but the HOA had recently changed their approved colors to include only black, white, or brown. I spent my Saturday afternoon repainting the mailbox white, wondering why anyone cared about such trivial details. But the notices kept coming. My porch light was too bright. My garden gnome was not on the approved decoration list. The wreath on my front door was considered seasonal decor and could only be displayed for 30 days. Each letter was signed by Karen Whitmore, HOA president, with increasingly stern language about compliance and community standards. I tried to be reasonable. I attended the monthly HOA meeting held in the community center, bringing Rex along because he gets anxious when left alone in the evening. The room fell silent when we walked in, 20 pairs of eyes staring at my dog like he was a wolf instead of a gentle giant who spent most of his time sleeping on my couch. Karen Whitmore stood at the front of the room, her perfectly styled blonde hair and sharp business suit making her look more like a CEO than a neighbor. She had the kind of smile that never reached her eyes, and when she spoke, her voice carried the authority of someone who was used to being obeyed without question. "We have discussed your numerous violations," she said, her gaze fixed on me while carefully avoiding looking at Rex. "The community standards exist for a reason. Property values depend on everyone following the same rules." I stood up slowly, keeping my voice calm and respectful. I understand the importance of community standards, but some of these rules seem arbitrary. Why can I only display a wreath for 30 days? What harm does a garden gnome cause to property values? The room erupted in whispers. Corinne's smile disappeared completely, replaced by a look of cold fury that made Rex shift uncomfortably beside me. He sensed the tension in the room, his ears perked up and his body alert. "The rules are not arbitrary," Corinne said, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "They are carefully crafted to maintain the character and value of our neighborhood. If you cannot follow simple guidelines, perhaps this community is not the right fit for you." I felt my face flush with anger, but I kept my voice steady. "I moved here because I wanted to be part of a community, but a community should be about helping each other, not finding reasons to punish people for minor infractions." That was my mistake. I had challenged Corinne Whitmore's authority in front of her audience, and I could see in her eyes that she would never forgive me for it. Rex sensed my rising tension and pressed against my leg, his warm presence reminding me to stay calm. We left the meeting in silence, but I knew the war had just begun. Corinne Whitmore had made it personal, and she had no idea what she was about to unleash. The harassment escalated quickly after that meeting. Within a week, I received 3 more violation notices, each one more ridiculous than the last. My trash cans were positioned 6 inches too far from the curb. My car was parked at an improper angle in my own driveway. The spacing between my sidewalk pavers was uneven and needed professional correction. But these were not just petty complaints anymore. The letters began mentioning fines, legal action, and something called enforcement measures that would be taken if I did not comply immediately. Each letter was signed by Corinne Whitmore, but now she included a title I had never seen before: Authorized Compliance Officer. I decided to do some research. Late one night, while Rex slept at my feet, I dug into the HOA bylaws and state regulations governing homeowners associations. What I found made my blood run cold. The HOA was operating far outside their legal authority, issuing fines they had no right to impose and threatening actions they had no power to take. The next morning, I called a lawyer who specialized in HOA disputes. David Martinez listened patiently as I explained the situation, occasionally asking questions about specific violations and the language used in the notices. "This is interesting," he said after I finished. "They are definitely overstepping their authority. HOAs have limited power, mostly related to architectural standards and common area maintenance. They cannot fine you for parking angles or trash can placement unless those specific rules are clearly defined in your original deed restrictions." I felt a wave of relief wash over me. "So I can ignore these notices?" "Not exactly," David warned. "Even though they are acting illegally, they can still make your life miserable. Document everything. Take photos of your property showing compliance with reasonable standards, and be prepared for them to escalate." He was right about the escalation. 2 days after my consultation with David, I noticed a van parked across the street from my house. 2 men in dark clothing sat inside, watching my property with cameras and notepads. When I walked Rex that evening, they followed us at a distance, photographing everything we did. Rex noticed them too. His hackles rose as we walked past their van, and he positioned himself between me and the strangers. The larger of the 2 men had a badge hanging from his belt, but something about it looked wrong. The shape was off, the colors too bright, like a costume piece rather than real law enforcement identification. "Those are not real police officers," I told Rex as we headed home. "But they want us to think they are." That night, I installed security cameras around my property. The next morning, I reviewed the footage and discovered something chilling. The fake officers had been on my property after midnight, walking around my house with flashlights, peering through windows, and taking measurements of my yard. I called David Martinez immediately. "They are trespassing on your property," he said after I described the footage. "Real police would need a warrant or probable cause. These people have neither. Call the real police and file a report." But when I called the police department, the desk sergeant seemed uninterested. "HOA disputes are civil matters," he said. "Unless they are threatening you directly or damaging your property, there is not much we can do." The fake officers became bolder. They started approaching my neighbors, identifying themselves as HOA enforcement officers, and asking questions about my activities. Mrs. Patterson, who lived next door, came over to warn me. "They asked if your dog was dangerous," she said, her voice trembling. "They wanted to know if Rex had ever bitten anyone or if you kept him properly restrained." I told them Rex was the sweetest dog in the neighborhood, but they kept insisting there had been complaints. I thanked Mrs. Patterson and immediately called David Martinez again. "They are building a case," he said, "creating a paper trail of fake complaints and false evidence. This is no longer about HOA violations. This is harassment with intent to force you out of your home." That evening, I received a certified letter that made my hands shake as I read it. The HOA was demanding immediate access to my property for a comprehensive compliance inspection. The letter threatened legal action if I did not comply within 48 hours. The signature at the bottom was not just Karen Whitmore anymore. It was signed by Whitmore and Associates, Authorized Enforcement Division, with an official-looking seal that I was certain had never been approved by any legitimate authority. I showed the letter to Rex, who sniffed it and curled his lip in disgust. Even my dog could tell something was wrong with these people. "They are planning something big," I told him, "but we are ready for them." Rex looked up at me with those intelligent brown eyes, and I could see the determination there. He understood that his family was under threat, and he was prepared to do whatever it took to protect us. The psychological warfare intensified over the next 2 weeks. Every morning brought new harassment tactics designed to wear down my resistance and force me into submission. The fake enforcement officers established a regular patrol schedule, driving past my house every 2 hours and parking across the street to conduct what they called compliance monitoring. I documented everything, every photograph they took, every time they stepped onto my property, every conversation they had with my neighbors. My security cameras captured their faces, their license plates, and their increasingly bold trespassing activities. Rex became my constant shadow during these surveillance sessions, his massive presence a reminder that I was not facing this alone. The certified letters multiplied like a plague. The HOA demanded access to my basement for structural compliance verification. They wanted to inspect my attic for unauthorized modifications. They claimed my internet installation required community approval because the cables were visible from the street. Each demand was more ridiculous than the last, but the threats grew more serious with every letter. Karen Whitmore escalated her personal involvement. She began showing up at my front door with her fake enforcement officers, standing on my porch like she owned the place. During one visit, she brought a clipboard and what appeared to be official inspection forms. "We need to complete the interior compliance check," she announced when I opened the door. Rex stood behind me, his body tense but controlled. Corinne's eyes darted nervously to my dog, and I could see her confidence falter. "You have no legal authority to enter my home," I said calmly. "If you want to inspect my property, get a warrant from a real judge." Corinne's face flushed red with anger. "We do not need a warrant. The HOA covenant gives us inspection rights for compliance purposes. If you refuse to cooperate, we will be forced to take stronger measures." I stepped forward slightly, and Rex moved with me. What stronger measures would those be? One of the fake officers touched his badge nervously. "We have enforcement authority granted by the Homeowners Association. Failure to comply with lawful orders can result in immediate action." "Lawful orders?" I laughed. "From who? You are not police officers. You have no legal authority on my property. You are trespassing, and if you do not leave immediately, I will call the real police." They left, but not before Corinne turned back to deliver one final threat. "You cannot hide behind that dog forever. We will complete our inspection, with or without your cooperation." The next day, I discovered they had been conducting surveillance on other neighbors who had questioned HOA policies. Mrs. Chen from 3 houses down called to warn me that the fake officers had been asking about my work schedule, trying to determine when I would be away from home. "They wanted to know if you travel for business," she said. "They asked about your daily routine, when you walk Rex, when you go grocery shopping. I told them it was none of their business, but they seemed very interested in your schedule." I realized they were planning something that required me to be away from home. But I work from home, and Rex never leaves my side. They would have to find another way to gain access to my property. That weekend, I received a call from my elderly neighbor, Mr. Rodriguez. "There are men in your backyard," he said. "They have measuring equipment and cameras. They said they were doing a property survey for the HOA." I grabbed Rex and ran outside to find 2 fake officers in my backyard, photographing my fence line and taking measurements near my back door. They had entered through the gate, which they had somehow unlocked without my permission. "What are you doing on my property?" I demanded. The larger man held up a clipboard. "Boundary compliance verification. We received complaints about possible encroachment issues." "Get off my property right now," I said. Rex moved to my side, his deep growl making both men step backward. "We have authorization from the HOA," the second man said, but his voice lacked conviction. "You have no authorization to be on my property without my permission. This is trespassing, and I am calling the police." They left quickly, but not before taking several more photographs of my house and yard. I called the police again, but the responding officer seemed more interested in Rex than in the trespassing complaint. "Big dog you have there," he said. "Is he friendly?" "He is protective of his family," I replied. "But he has never bitten anyone and never will unless someone threatens us." The officer made notes in his report, but warned me that HOA disputes rarely resulted in criminal charges. "Document everything," he advised, "but be careful not to escalate the situation." That night, I could not sleep. Rex sensed my anxiety and stayed close, his warm presence a comfort in the growing darkness. I knew the fake officers were planning something big, and I had a terrible feeling that our peaceful life was about to explode into chaos. The morning of the confrontation started like any other Tuesday. I was at my desk by 7, reviewing code for a client project while Rex dozed beside my chair. The autumn sunlight streamed through my office window, and for a moment I almost forgot about the months of harassment and intimidation. That peace shattered at exactly 9, 47 a.m. when Rex suddenly lifted his head, his ears perked and his body rigid with alertness. He had heard something that my human ears had missed, but his expression told me everything I needed to know. Danger was approaching. I saved my work and moved to the front window. 3 vehicles were parked outside my house. 2 looked like unmarked police cars, complete with small antennas and tinted windows. The third was a white van with Property Enforcement Services painted on the side in official-looking letters. 6 men emerged from the vehicles, all wearing dark blue uniforms with badges and utility belts. They looked like police officers, but something was wrong with the picture. Their uniforms were too new, too clean. Their badges caught the sunlight in a way that suggested cheap metal rather than real law enforcement identification. Rex positioned himself between me and the front door, his massive body coiled like a spring. He had never seen these specific men before, but his instincts recognized the threat they represented. His deep growl vibrated through the floor, a warning that made my heart race. The lead man approached my front door with a clipboard and what appeared to be official documents. He knocked loudly, the sound echoing through my house like gunshots. When I opened the door, keeping the chain lock engaged, he held up a badge that looked real enough to fool most people. "Property Enforcement Services," he announced in a voice that was trying too hard to sound authoritative. "We have a court order for immediate property inspection. You need to open this door and allow us access." I studied the badge more carefully. The seal was wrong, the colors too bright, and the font looked like something printed on a home computer. "Let me see your identification and the court order," I said. He thrust a document through the gap in the door. The paper looked official, with seals and signatures, but the formatting was wrong. Real court orders have specific language and formatting requirements, and this document read like it had been written by someone who had never seen a real legal document. "This is not a real court order," I said. "You are not real police officers. You need to leave my property immediately." The fake officer's expression hardened. "Sir, you are interfering with a lawful investigation. If you do not comply immediately, we will be forced to take enforcement action." Behind him, the other 5 men moved into position around my porch and yard. They were trying to intimidate me with their numbers and official-looking equipment, but their coordination was too practiced, too rehearsed. Real police officers would have called for backup and followed proper procedures. These men were following a script. "I am not interfering with anything," I said. "I am protecting my property from people who have no legal authority to be here. If you want to inspect my house, get a real warrant from a real judge." Rex moved closer to the door, his body language making it clear that he was ready to defend his family. The fake officers could hear his growling through the door, and I saw several of them step backward involuntarily. "Sir, you need to control your animal," the lead man said. "Interfering with law enforcement is a serious crime." "So is impersonating a police officer," I replied. "I am calling the real police right now." I pulled out my phone and dialed 911, but the fake officers were not deterred. If anything, they seemed more determined to gain entry before real law enforcement arrived. The lead man spoke quietly into a radio, and I heard him say, "We need to move now. He is not cooperating." The fake officers spread out around my house, and I realized they were preparing for forced entry. I had called their bluff, and now they had to follow through or risk exposure. They had gone too far to back down now. I moved away from the front door and called to Rex. "Come here, boy. We need to get ready." Rex understood immediately. He had been trained for protection, and his instincts told him that the pack was under attack. He positioned himself in the living room where he could see both the front and back doors, his muscles coiled and ready for action. The fake officers were examining my doors and windows, looking for the easiest point of entry. I could hear them talking in hushed voices about lock types and security measures. They were planning a break-in, and they thought they were dealing with a helpless homeowner who would surrender once they showed enough force. They had no idea what was waiting for them inside. The sound of splintering wood exploded through my house as my front door burst inward. The lead fake officer stormed through the opening, shouting commands and reaching for what I now knew was a fake badge. That was when Rex rose to his full height, all 175 pounds of protective fury, and let out a growl that made the walls shake. The transformation in that room was immediate and absolute. 3 men who had been shouting orders and waving fake badges suddenly found themselves face to face with the reality of their situation. Rex stood in the center of my living room, his massive frame blocking their path, his intelligent eyes fixed on the lead intruder with laser focus. The fake officer who had been so confident just moments before now stood frozen in my doorway, his hand halfway to his belt, his face pale with the sudden understanding that he had made a terrible miscalculation. Rex did not bark or snarl. He simply stood there, 175 pounds of controlled power, his presence filling the room like a storm cloud ready to unleash lightning. "Nobody move," I said calmly, pulling out my phone to record everything. "Rex, hold." My dog understood the command perfectly. He had been trained for protection, and his years of experience told him exactly how to handle this situation. He positioned himself so that he could see all 3 intruders at once, his body language making it clear that any aggressive movement would trigger an immediate response. The second fake officer tried to maintain the illusion of authority. "Sir, you need to control your animal. We are conducting a lawful investigation." "You are conducting a home invasion," I replied, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. "You have no legal authority to be in my house. You broke down my door. You are criminals, and my dog is protecting his family from intruders." Rex shifted slightly, his movement causing all 3 men to freeze. He was not aggressive, but his controlled readiness was more terrifying than any display of violence could have been. He was a trained guardian, and he understood that his job was to contain the threat while protecting his family. The third fake officer, who had been silent until now, tried to edge toward the back of the room. Rex tracked his movement without turning his head, his peripheral vision keeping all 3 intruders in sight simultaneously. The man stopped immediately, recognizing that any attempt to escape would trigger a response he was not prepared to handle. "This is ridiculous," the lead fake officer said, but his voice cracked with fear. "We have authorization from the HOA. We are doing our job." "Your job is breaking into people's homes?" I asked, continuing to record their faces and voices. "Your job is impersonating police officers. Your job is terrorizing homeowners with fake documents and illegal surveillance." The sound of real sirens approaching made all 3 fake officers look toward the door. I had called 911 before they forced entry, and genuine law enforcement was finally arriving to sort out this mess. "Those are real police officers," I said. "You might want to think about how you are going to explain this situation to them." Rex maintained his position, but I could see the relief in his eyes. His family was safe, and help was coming. He had done his job perfectly, containing the threat without violence, protecting his home without crossing the line into aggression. Two real police officers entered through my broken front door, their weapons drawn but lowered when they assessed the situation. The contrast between genuine law enforcement and the fake officers was immediately obvious. The real officers moved with professional confidence, their uniforms properly fitted, their equipment regulations standard. "We received a call about a home invasion," the first officer said, his eyes taking in the scene quickly. "What is the situation here?" "These three men broke into my home," I said, gesturing to the fake officers. "They claim to be law enforcement, but their badges are fake and their documents are forged. They have been harassing me for months on behalf of a corrupt HOA." The lead fake officer tried one last desperate attempt to maintain his charade. "Officer, we are conducting a legitimate property inspection. We have authorization from the Homeowners Association." The real police officer examined the fake badge and documents with professional skepticism. "Property inspection, with forced entry, do you have identification?" The fake officers exchanged nervous glances. Their fake badges might fool homeowners, but real police officers knew what genuine law enforcement identification looked like. The game was over, and they knew it. "Sir, I need you to call off your dog," the real officer said to me. "Rex, release," I commanded. My dog immediately relaxed his stance but remained alert. He moved to my side, his job complete but his readiness unchanged. The real officers began questioning the fake officers about their identification, their authority, and their reasons for forcing entry into my home. The fake officers' stories began falling apart immediately under professional scrutiny. Their badges were obvious fakes, their documents were forgeries, and their behavior was clearly criminal. "You are under arrest for impersonating police officers, breaking and entering and trespassing," the real officer announced. "You have the right to remain silent." As handcuffs clicked onto the wrists of the fake officers, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Months of harassment and intimidation were finally over. Rex pressed against my leg, his warm presence a reminder that we had survived this ordeal together. The lead fake officer looked at me with hatred in his eyes as he was led away. "This is not over," he said. "Yes, it is," I replied. "It is completely over." The police investigation that followed the arrests revealed a conspiracy far more extensive than I had imagined. Detective Sarah Williams, who was assigned to the case, spent 3 hours at my house that first day, reviewing my security footage and examining the months of documentation I had collected. "This is impressive," she said, scrolling through the photos and videos on my computer. "You have documented evidence of harassment, trespassing, impersonation of law enforcement, and conspiracy. This is not just an HOA dispute. This is organized criminal activity." Rex lay beside my desk during the interview, his presence calming me as I relived the months of escalating threats and intimidation. Detective Williams was fascinated by his role in the confrontation. "Your dog showed remarkable restraint," she said. "He could have seriously injured those men, but he chose to contain them instead. That level of training and discipline is unusual." "Rex understands the difference between protection and aggression," I explained. "He was trained to guard his family, not to attack people. He did exactly what he was supposed to do." Over the next week, the investigation expanded as other neighbors came forward with similar stories. Mrs. Patterson reported that the fake officers had threatened to have her dog removed from the neighborhood unless she supported their harassment campaign against me. Mr. Rodriguez revealed that Karen Whitmore had tried to pressure him into signing a petition demanding my removal from the community. The fake officers, when questioned by police, revealed the full scope of the conspiracy. They were hired by Karen Whitmore and several other HOA board members to intimidate homeowners who challenged their authority. They had been operating in multiple neighborhoods, using fear and fake legal documents to force compliance with arbitrary rules. They were running a protection racket, Detective Williams explained. Pay the fines, follow the rules, or face escalating harassment from fake law enforcement. They made thousands of dollars from homeowners who were too scared to fight back. The charges against the fake officers were extensive: impersonating police officers, breaking and entering, trespassing, harassment, and conspiracy. But the investigation did not stop there. The police began examining Karen Whitmore's role in organizing and funding the criminal operation. When they arrested Karen at her home, she tried to maintain her innocence. "I hired a legitimate property management company," she claimed. "I had no idea they were impersonating police officers." But the evidence told a different story. Karen's phone records showed dozens of calls to the fake officers, coordinating their harassment campaigns and planning their escalation tactics. Her bank records revealed payments to property enforcement services totaling over $15,000 over 6 months. The media attention began immediately after the arrests. Local news stations picked up the story of the fake HOA cops and the dog who stopped them. Rex became an overnight celebrity, though he seemed more interested in his afternoon nap than in his newfound fame. "Hero Dog Stops Fake Police" was the headline in the morning paper. The story described the months of harassment and the dramatic confrontation that ended with arrests and justice. But the article also highlighted the broader issue of HOA abuse and the need for stronger oversight of neighborhood associations. My phone rang constantly with interview requests and messages of support from other homeowners who had faced similar harassment. Many of them shared stories of arbitrary fines, illegal inspections, and intimidation tactics that had gone unchallenged for years. David Martinez, my lawyer, worked with the prosecutor's office to ensure that all the criminal charges would stick. "This case is going to set a precedent," he told me. "HOAs cannot hire fake police to enforce their rules. They cannot harass homeowners into submission. They have to follow the law like everyone else." The civil lawsuit that followed was even more satisfying. Karen Whitmore and the other HOA board members were personally liable for the criminal conspiracy they had organized. The fake officers faced both criminal charges and civil penalties. The HOA itself was dissolved by court order, its assets distributed to compensate the victims of their harassment campaign. "The financial penalties are substantial," David explained. "Karen Whitmore will lose her home, her savings, and her reputation. The fake officers will serve prison time and pay restitution. The other board members will face personal bankruptcy." But the most important outcome was the change in my neighborhood. With the corrupt HOA dissolved, the residents formed a new community association focused on genuine neighborhood improvement rather than petty rule enforcement. People who had been afraid to speak out during the harassment campaign now participated openly in community decisions. Mrs. Patterson organized a neighborhood barbecue to celebrate the return of peace to our street. Rex was the guest of honor, receiving treats and attention from neighbors who had been too scared to approach him during the months of conflict. "Rex saved all of us," Mrs. Patterson said, scratching behind his ears. He exposed the corruption and brought justice to our neighborhood. Rex accepted the praise with typical German Shepherd dignity, but I could see the contentment in his eyes. His family was safe, his neighborhood was peaceful, and he had done his job perfectly. The legal settlements provided compensation for the harassment and emotional distress, but the real victory was the restoration of justice and community in our neighborhood. People could live peacefully without fear of arbitrary rules and fake enforcement. 6 months after the arrests, my neighborhood had transformed into the community I had originally hoped to find. The new homeowners association focused on genuine improvement projects like organizing block parties, maintaining the small park at the end of our street, and helping elderly neighbors with yard work. Rex and I attended every meeting, where he was always greeted with enthusiasm and treats from neighbors who remembered his role in exposing the corruption. The criminal trials concluded with satisfying results. Karen Whitmore was sentenced to 2 years in prison for conspiracy and fraud. The fake officers received sentences ranging from 18 months to 3 years for impersonation, breaking and entering, and conspiracy. The judge made it clear that their actions had terrorized an entire community and violated the fundamental rights of law-abiding homeowners. "You were hired to intimidate and harass innocent people," Judge Patricia Coleman said during sentencing. "You broke into homes, threatened families, and destroyed the peace of mind that every person deserves in their own neighborhood. The sentences I am imposing reflect the seriousness of your crimes and the harm you caused to this community." The civil settlements were equally satisfying. My lawyer David Martinez negotiated a substantial financial settlement that covered my legal expenses, property damage, and compensation for months of harassment and emotional distress. But more importantly, the settlement established legal precedents that would protect other homeowners from similar abuse. "This case has been cited in 3 other states," David told me during our final meeting. "HOAs across the country are being forced to review their enforcement policies and ensure they are operating within legal boundaries. Your courage to fight back has protected thousands of other homeowners." Rex, meanwhile, had become something of a local celebrity. The story of the German Shepherd who stopped fake police had spread far beyond our neighborhood, inspiring other pet owners to speak up about the protective value of well-trained dogs. A local dog training facility asked me to speak about Rex's training and behavior during the confrontation. "Rex demonstrated perfect protective instincts," I told the audience of dog owners. "He assessed the threat, contained the danger, and protected his family without unnecessary aggression. That level of training and discipline comes from consistent work and mutual respect between dog and owner." After the presentation, several families approached me about adopting German Shepherds from the same shelter where I had found Rex. The shelter reported a significant increase in adoptions of large breed dogs, with many families specifically requesting protection dogs like Rex. But Rex's favorite part of our new normal was the daily walks through our peaceful neighborhood. Children would run up to pet him, and their parents would tell stories about how his actions had made their community safer. He accepted the attention with typical German Shepherd dignity, but I could see the contentment in his intelligent brown eyes. The house repairs were completed quickly, with the insurance company covering the cost of the broken door and additional security measures. I installed a new front door with reinforced framing and upgraded locks, but the security cameras revealed that the harassment had completely stopped. The only visitors to my property now were neighbors bringing homemade cookies and UPS drivers delivering packages. My work-from-home routine returned to normal, with Rex resuming his position beside my desk during video calls. Several clients commented on his presence during meetings, and one even asked about his availability for corporate security consulting. I politely declined, explaining that Rex was already fully employed as Chief Security Officer of our household. The new Homeowners Association elected me to serve on the board, along with Mrs. Patterson and Mr. Rodriguez. Our first official act was to establish clear guidelines limiting the association's authority to architectural standards and common area maintenance, with specific protections for homeowner privacy and property rights. "We will never allow this neighborhood to be terrorized again," Mrs. Patterson said during our first board meeting. "The association exists to serve the community, not to control it." Rex attended every board meeting, where he served as an unofficial reminder of what happens when authority figures exceed their legitimate power. His presence encouraged honest discussion and discouraged any attempts to return to the authoritarian tactics of the previous regime. 1 year after the confrontation, I received a letter from a homeowner in Texas who had read about our case online. She was facing similar harassment from her HOA and wanted advice about fighting back. I shared our story and connected her with David Martinez, who had developed expertise in HOA abuse cases. "Your courage to stand up to those criminals inspired me to fight for my own rights," she wrote. "Rex should know that his actions are still protecting families across the country." I read the letter to Rex during our evening walk, and he wagged his tail as if he understood every word. He had protected his family, exposed corruption, and helped create a safer community for everyone. But to him, it was simple. He had done what any loyal dog would do when his pack was threatened. As we walked past the house where Karen Whitmore used to live, now occupied by a young family with 2 small children, Rex showed no interest in the past. He was focused on the present, alert to his surroundings, but relaxed in the knowledge that his neighborhood was safe. The children ran out to greet us, their parents following with smiles and waves. "Rex," the little girl called out, producing a dog treat from her pocket. "Mom said you are the hero who saved our neighborhood." Rex accepted the treat with gentle dignity, allowing the children to pet his massive head, while their parents thanked me for fighting the corruption that had terrorized the community before their arrival. "We heard about what happened," the father said. "It is amazing how one person's courage to stand up to bullies can change everything for the better." I looked down at Rex, who was enjoying the attention from his young fans, and smiled. It was not just one person. It was a team effort. Rex and I protected each other, and together we protected our community. As we continued our walk, I reflected on the lessons learned from our ordeal. Bullies rely on fear and intimidation to maintain power, but when good people stand together and refuse to be intimidated, justice will prevail. Sometimes that justice comes through legal channels, sometimes through community action, and sometimes through the unwavering loyalty of a 175-pound German shepherd who understands that protecting his family is the most important job in the world. Rex looked up at me as we reached our front door, his intelligent eyes reflecting the porch light. He had no interest in being a celebrity or a symbol of justice. He was simply a dog who loved his family and would do anything to keep them safe. And that, I realized, was exactly what heroism looked like in real life. Not grand gestures or dramatic speeches, but quiet courage, unwavering loyalty, and the willingness to stand up for what is right when it matters most. The fake HOA cops had kicked down my door expecting to find a helpless victim. Instead, They found Rex, justice, and the beginning of the end for their criminal enterprise. Sometimes the best defense against corruption is simply refusing to be afraid and having a loyal friend who will never let you face danger alone. Our neighborhood is peaceful now, our community is strong, and Rex continues to be the best partner anyone could ask for in the ongoing fight for justice and dignity. The bullies are gone, the corruption is exposed, and families can live peacefully in their own homes without fear of harassment or intimidation. That is what victory looks like, and it tastes like the dog treats our neighbors bring Rex every time they want to thank him for protecting their community. He accepts their gratitude with typical German shepherd grace, but I know he would do it all again in a heartbeat if his family needed protection. Because that is what heroes do, whether they have 2 legs or 4 paws, whether they carry badges or dog toys. They stand up for what is right, protect those who cannot protect themselves, and never back down when justice is on the line. The fake cops learned that lesson the hard way, and our neighborhood is better for it.